When I was starting out as a graphic designer, there are some things that I wish that I knew a little bit sooner. Because in graphic design, there are some common mistakes that can even trip up some of the most experienced graphic designers. And avoiding these mistakes can make a big difference in keeping your work professional and keeping your clients happy. So welcome back to HanSelah. I'm Han. I'll talk about all things to do with graphic design and running my own freelance graphic design business. And in today's video, I'm going to share with you 10 mistakes to avoid, or 10 things you should never do as a graphic designer if you want to keep your work and your reputation professional. So the first mistake that you want to avoid is designing a logo in any Rusterbased program like Photoshop or Procreate. I have said this so many times, but logos need to be, not maybe, need to be created in vector-based programs and softwares. So that would be something like Adobe Illustrator. So never create a logo in a Ruster-based program. So the difference between the two is vector-based programs, that is the one that we want for logos. It uses maths equations to create all of the graphics. So this means the shapes, the lines, the colors, the text, it's all actually created using points and paths rather than pixels. So when you create a logo in a vector format, you can actually scale it an infinite amount of times, like big or small, and it's not going to lose any quality, which makes it perfect for all sizes. So you can design something really small for a web format like an icon, or you can design something huge and gigantic like a billboard. Vectors are also ideal because you can export them at any format, so like JPEG, PNG, SVG, it'll all work. And you can resize those as necessary without losing any quality. So they'll always be sharp and have detail. But on the other hand, if you create a logo in Procreate or Photoshop, which are both Ruster-based programs, it may look good at one size, but the moment you start to scale it, it's going to blur and pixelate. So if you think of like a TV screen, for example, it's made up of all those tiny little pixels, okay? So that is basically what's in those Ruster-based programs. So the moment you start to transform them, whether that be resizing it, rotating it, repositioning it, whatever, it will then start to lose quality every single time you make a change. If you only have an iPad to create a logo, please do not use Procreate, rather use a vector-based program. For example, you can use Adobe Illustrator on the iPad, that is paid though, and if you want a free app, you can use Adobe Fresco. So the second thing that you want to avoid is starting projects without a signed contract. So always make sure that you have a clear written agreement with your clients. And in this contract, it should outline the project scope, the deliverables, the payment terms, the timeline, the revisions, the intellectual property rights. And by having all of this, you can avoid any misunderstandings or unpaid work. Without having a signed contract, you risk issues like having unpaid invoices. Clients sometimes start to request even more work than what was originally decided on, or there might be conflicts over the rights to the final designs. So a solid contract will give you legal protection, and it also sets a really professional tone in your business because you're showing clients that you take your business seriously and you're taking their project seriously. So having a contract is one of the best ways to protect your time, your energy, and your creativity. I also found that since I started having a contract in all of my projects, whether it's like a small project or a really large one, all of my clients take me a lot more seriously than when I didn't have a contract. The third thing that you want to avoid is working without a portfolio. So having a well-curated graphic design portfolio is really great for showcasing your skills as a graphic designer. And in turn, having a professional portfolio also helps you get higher paying clients. Because not having a portfolio makes it difficult for clients to assess whether they want to work with you or not, because they don't know your vibe, they don't know your style, they don't know what you can and can't do. When it comes to having a graphic design portfolio, I personally recommend that you have a paid platform for your portfolio. I wouldn't recommend having it on Instagram, for example, because you technically don't own anything that you put on Instagram. So one day they could just decide to remove Instagram or take it down, or it could go down for like 24 hours or a week or whatever, and you wouldn't be able to do anything and people won't be able to see you or contact you. So having a paid domain website shows clients that you are serious about your work, that you've invested in your work in your portfolio, that you're proud of it, and that you have complete ownership of your website, so you have final and full say of everything that goes on in your portfolio, and someone can't just like remove something randomly from your portfolio because they don't like it. And along with having a portfolio, you should also be updating your portfolio regularly. Okay, so the fourth thing that you're going to want to avoid is ignoring your clients' input and feedback. While clients may not necessarily be design experts like us, their input is still valuable to the project. So dismissing their ideas can lead to a negative experience for them. They may not feel heard, and they are paying you to design the work for them, so it is important that you take into consideration what they are wanting. But if you are in a situation where the client is set on one idea, I would suggest hopping on a meeting and chatting to your client and actually breaking it down and explain to them that why that decision that they want may not necessarily be the best decision for their brand going forward from a graphic designer's point of view. It is important to explain to them why, from a graphic designer's perspective and standpoint, we make our certain decisions, because the client may not necessarily understand the reasoning behind why we do certain things. It is also our responsibility as graphic designers to adhere to the client brief and the requirements for the project as closely as possible, but at the same time making informed graphic design decisions. The fifth mistake that you're going to want to avoid is using any sort of unlicensed fonts, text, graphics, icons, and so forth. Unlicensed material can lead to major issues. It may not necessarily be right now, but in future, definitely. So always use assets that have appropriate licenses for them. And if you can't do that, create original content. We're graphic designers, that's what we do. It is our job as graphic designers to make sure our clients are all in good legal standing with all of the assets that they have. If you randomly downloaded a font one day, like 3 years ago, and then you decide to use it in a client project today, and you forget that it doesn't have a commercial license, it only has a personal license, that will cause so many problems. Because you'll probably be slapped with a fine or a fee, or you won't be able to use it, and then going through all the hassle, and then imagine they've printed something, and now all this printed stuff, and oh my goodness, it's just one big fiasco. Also, when you're choosing assets and fonts, make sure that it has the correct license. For example, you may be able to use a font on a website, but the license may not be covered for a social media platform. Or you may be able to use it for print, but then not on a website. And sometimes you may be able to use it on a printed packaging, for example, up to 10,000 items. But then beyond 10,000 items, you might need another type of license. So you have to check the license, read it, make sure that you're in great legal standing. Learning and understanding that these licenses do exist and they are serious, because you don't want to be slapped with a major fine for you or your client or both. The sixth thing that you're going to want to avoid is not backing up your files. Losing files can be disastrous. Oh my goodness. Especially for large projects. So use cloud storage, use external SSDs if you have to, or do automated backups to avoid any sort of data loss. I personally back up my client files to an external SSD, and I also use cloud storage as well. It's also very important to back up your files, because a lot of clients will actually return after like 6 months or a year or maybe 2 years. They'll be like, oh, can you do this for me? And then I'll be able to quickly locate and use their files without having to ask them like, can I have the logo file? Can I have your color codes? Can I have this? Can I have that? I've got all of it on hand, backed up in my archives. The seventh thing that you're going to want to avoid is setting incorrect file specs for print and web. You have to understand the requirements for each of those mediums. So whether that's CMYK for print or RGB for web, you need to make sure that you set up your documents accordingly to avoid any incorrect color and poor quality issues. I could probably make an entire video all on print and web and the differences between setting up your files and exportation and all the things that you need to make sure that you do for each, because it's a lot. But simply put, just knowing the difference between the color modes, the correct resolution, printer's marks, final exportation, and all that jazz is so important. For print, using the wrong color mode, like using RGB instead of CMYK, can cause unexpected color shifts. So the printed piece won't actually match what you saw on screen, and clients are going to be like, what's going on here? Similarly, using a low resolution file can cause it to become blurry or print with a bad quality. And it's going to look pixelated and just really unprofessional. Or if you don't set the correct bleed, or you don't add trim marks or printer's marks, it can get really confusing, and just learn how to do it correctly. And then on the web and the digital side, if you don't set up and export your files correctly, it can lead to slow load times. It'll also be a poor display on the screen, or it may even have a distorted appearance depending on what device you're looking at it on. Also, uploading an oversized file can slow down the website, so that's negatively going to impact the user experience. So each of those mediums have their own requirements, and getting them right ensures that your design always looks its best. Moving on to the 8th thing that you're going to want to avoid, and that is skipping the proofing and revision process. Mistakes do happen, but double checking for typos or layout errors and color inaccuracies can save you a lot of time, money, and frustration. I remember when I was working at a full service creative agency back home in South Africa, I would have a copywriter that would proof check all of my designs before it went off to client or went live to the public. And one day, I'll never forget this, oh my goodness. So in South Africa, we have a city called Pietermaritzburg, but I accidentally made a typo and called it Pietermaritzburg. Yeah, you don't forget that one. Thankfully, my copywriter flagged it and we corrected it before we sent it off. But yeah, that was a close one. I'm never going to forget that. So moving on to the 9th thing that you're going to want to avoid, and that is taking on projects that are outside of your skill set. Now, as graphic designers, we always say yes to things even if we don't know how to do it. But the more established I get in my career, I begin to know my strengths and stick by them. So don't promise what you can't deliver. If you truly don't know how to do something and you don't have the time to actually learn how to master that skill, rather refer your clients to another professional who can help them. However, don't go around recommending people that you haven't personally worked with, because if they are bad, for example, it then reflects negatively on you because you were the person that recommended it to them. So just be wary of who you recommend working with. Okay, and now moving on to the 10th and final thing to avoid as a graphic designer, and that is failing to ask your clients for feedback post-project. Constructive feedback helps you build stronger and better client relationships, and it can also lead to testimonials and referrals for future work. I personally have a short feedback questionnaire that I give each of my clients after the end of the project, and it's nice to get their input and understanding of how they think the project went. Allowing time for feedback also shows your clients that you are open to evolving and that you care about their client satisfaction. Plus, clients that feel heard are more likely to refer you to others. So post-project feedback is not only about learning, but it's also about building a solid, trusted reputation. So those are the 10 things that I would recommend are super important, whether you're starting out in your graphic design journey or if you're a skilled graphic designer. If you have any recommendations of things that you believe you should also avoid in graphic design, drop them in the comments, let me know. That way we can all learn and grow together. I hope you guys have a lovely day wherever you are in the world. Thank you so much for watching. Please give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one. Don't forget to check out this video if you want to see more cool graphic design content. And yeah, see you soon. Bye.